Now, of course, we're talking about schools and education and creativity. Now, I'm wondering about in your life, in terms of your background, what do you remember of your school? And that's going to lead to the second question, because the second question is going to deal with what would your dream school be? Let's say a high school, but let's start with the first one because I'm curious to see how your educational background shaped you and how, if it didn't shape you in terms of encouraging your creativity, how did you bust free from that?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I grew up in small town, Northern Ontario in the Canadian Shield, a small town of 5,000 isolated pulp and paper town. And my dad was a foreman at the paper mill. So he brought home tons of paper for us. So my brother and I drew. Well, I'm an artist. I teach in a faculty of arts. I'm an adjunct in the faculty of education. I teach art education. I teach design, the fundamentals of design, right? I have an exhibition that just went across Canada, actually, an installation. But in school, I went through, I think I learned, grade two. And the story's in the first book. Grade two. My favorite thing was when we did the spelling words, we'd have 20 vocabulary words for the week, right? And then we had to use 5 of those words in a story. We had to write a story. Well, I love that. Why? Because I was a grade 2 boy and I wanted laughs. I wanted attention, right? So one day, 3 of us got together, me and two friends of mine. We said, let's write a story together and we'll each be different characters in the story. And then we'll all volunteer to read, but it's from the perspective of a different character, right? And see what Mrs. Armstrong says. That's the teacher's name, right? She was actually a really nice lady. So we did this and we thought it was a great gag, right? It was going to be really funny. And it was some stupid story. It was based on Charles Schultz, Snoopy, right? He was a World War I pilot and he was shot down and he landed on a haystack on top of a farmer and was arrested by a policeman. So we had a policeman, a farmer, and a pilot. It was the stupidest story you'd ever imagined. But hey, grade 2 boys. Well, we put our hands up and then we read our stories and she calls to the front and she was ticked off at us. Whose idea was this? It was actually pretty interesting, like we did something out of the norm, right? Okay. I can go through this. Hey, grade 9. I go into high school in grade 9. Okay. And we write a provincial achievement test. 3 of us get called down to the principal's office when the results come back in. And they said, congratulations, boys. You 3 finished in the 97th percentile in the province of Ontario, the most highly populated province in Canada, right? And I said, my first question was, does it count? Does it count in my average? He said, no. He said, you don't understand. You beat 91% of the people in this province in this achievement exam. I said, well, what good is that? It doesn't count for anything. I didn't know what a percentile was, right? That's how stupid I was. Anyways, and I thought, what a dumb thing that was. So I went home that day. My mother asked me, how was school today? And I said, I got 90 in some tests, but it didn't count for anything. That's what I told her. And if she had known what it was for, she would have freaked out, what had happened. Fast forward to grade 12. We write the same provincial achievement exams. Now I've checked out. I never wrote a final exam in high school. I never had to. I checked out. I go, well, this is pretty simple. This is easy to predict. Know how I answered the questions? In a zigzag. A, B, C, D, E, up to back up. It took me longer to do it that way than I had to answer the damn questions. Okay. I finished in the 24th percentile doing that. I thought that was kind of neat. I finished 24th percentile. I beat 24% of the people in the province answering in a zigzag. And you know what? Nobody in the Ministry of Education at the school latched on to what happened to this kid. How do you go from 91 to 24? Well, obviously I was goofing around, but I dissociated. Now, not to say I didn't have some great teachers. My high school, we had, at that time, there was grade 13 in the province of Ontario. They've done away with it. My last year in high school, my English teacher turned me on to T.S. Eliot, the love song of G.L. for Proof Rock, and Shakespeare. He was awesome. And I had teachers like that along the way. Music's my passion. I couldn't take music in grade 9 because they only would allow you to take an instrument and you made a sound on with your first attempt. And I wanted saxophone because it was the only thing I could see playing that wasn't a nerd instrument. Because I grew up it's a hard rock town, and I was a hockey player and all that, hockey, ball, that's all we did, right? And he wouldn't give it to me. I went up the front, I never saw an instrument in real life before, and I made the reed squeak. And he said, no, you can't have it. And then he said, he went in the back room and came out with a tuba and said, here's one for you. And I said, no way. I ran down to the principal's office and changed out of music right then and there in grade 9. So that was my schooling. And I was always building, though, always making. My brother and I built a kayak in high school. I was always making stuff, making airplanes, building stuff out of paper and cardboard my father brought home, always designing stuff, right? So that was it. That would be my schooling for high school and public school or whatever. And then university was kind of, I got there and go, what am I going to do here? My first degree's in economics. And my son, the business major, says I have the worst investment profile of anybody he knows because of some of the stocks I invest in. So university was kind of an interesting time, and I was there too young and whatever. And it's just a game. I got onto it. I could see it easily until I finally, I really liked teaching. I got into the tennis business. I used to be a teaching pro in tennis. And that's when I discovered, boy, do I ever like talking to people and teaching and just interacting in the social bit. And that's where I think my passion. So my passions would be design. I'm an idea design guy, and I love teaching and communicating. That's where I would be, where I locate myself.
So you were basically able to overcome.
We just did it. Just did it. You know what? You can only keep that energy down for so long. I mean, Howard Gardner talks about it. He's got a 1993 book called Creating Minds. He talks about the stuff you engender as a child as the capital of creativity. That if we don't allow it, it'll resurface somewhere, or it'll manifest itself, as a lot of high school students do, in subversion. Some of the most creative acts you see in high school are subversion acts. Vandalism and stuff like that. I remember when I was student teaching, a friend of mine was teaching in the high school shop in woodworking, and a fire alarm went, and one of the boys stayed behind and nailed everybody's books to their desk. And when everybody came back in, their books were in their piles, but they were all nailed down, right? I thought that was kind of funny. That was pretty innovative, too, you see? So when you dissociate, your creativity goes elsewhere. You subvert, and you get into all that kind of stuff. A lot of crime's very creative, right? When you think about it. Not that I condone it now.
I understand.